What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we're going to be doing another rant episode. This one will be about the four teams in the AFC North. In order, we will be discussing the Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, Cleveland Browns, and Pittsburgh Steelers. So, if you haven't seen any of the rant videos before, I just made a couple points here and there about each team and why I don't like them. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. We'll start with the Baltimore Ravens. And point one here is Ed Reed and Ray Lewis. So long story short, if you're around my age, which is, in your mid-20s or a little younger, if you're in your 20s or older, you know Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. You know how those two guys played. They were vicious, hard-hitting players that they were hated. They were despised. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole controversy about Ray Lewis, off the field. If he murdered somebody, I'm not going to get into that. But both of these guys were feared and hated. They were just dirty players. Granted, the NFL was different back in the 2000s, but they were dirty players at the time. And thankfully, my Eagles didn't play them more than 3 times in a decade because of the fact that they're AFC versus NFC. But you didn't want to play those guys. Art Modell in Cleveland. So in the mid-90s, Art Modell, he had owned the Cleveland Browns since 1961. And in the mid-90s, he decides to just leave the city of Cleveland and move to Baltimore. So listen, I'm not a Browns fan, but what he did to Cleveland, that was dirty, okay? He had done all this talk about how it was wrong for the Colts to relocate from Baltimore to Indianapolis. And that happened in 83, I want to say. And then he goes 12 years later and moves the Cleveland Browns to Baltimore. And the problem was he did it more or less behind closed doors. And it's just kind of like, come on, why would you do that? Cleveland fans are some of the most passionate fans in the league. And they're supporting a garbage football team. The least you can do is stay there for them. Lastly, we have Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, he just thinks he's this elite quarterback when in reality he's not. And any Ravens fan you talk to mentions Flacco among the top of the 2010s. He's not a top quarterback of the 2010s. He got a Super Bowl ring as a starter and an MVP, but by that logic, Nick Foles is among the top quarterbacks in the 2010s. So I really don't want to hear any Baltimore fans talking about how great Flacco is. Then we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, full disclosure, I have no mixed feelings towards the Bengals. I like them enough. I'm not a fan, but I like them. Ties. The past 2 times the Eagles have tied, which would be 2012 and 2020, it's been against the Bengals. I don't understand what it is. And then the other big thing is, it made Donovan McNabb look like a moron because after the game in 2008 and 2020. And after the game in 2008, he's like, I didn't know we could tie. It made him look like an idiot. And I'm a McNabb fan, so AJ Green. I'm a fan of AJ Green. AJ Green is one of my favorite players in the league, mostly because in fantasy, he's helped me out a couple years. But they're wasting his career. They're killing this guy's career. Now, you look at him and Julio Jones. Those 2 guys, that was the 2012 draft. They should both be Hall of Famers. But AJ Green really isn't looking like a Hall of Famer because the Bengals haven't done anything to help him. Andy Dalton was a good quarterback, but good doesn't win you a Super Bowl. Good doesn't get you in the Hall of Fame. So maybe Joe Burrow will do it, but right now it looks like AJ Green wants out of Cincinnati, and I don't blame him. They tagged him this offseason to keep him. I don't think AJ Green's staying in Cincinnati past 2020. Good for him. Get out of there. They're not doing anything to help you. Cleveland Browns. Now, I do want to make this point real quick. As of this recording, the Eagles have played the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Bengals in 2020. They have not played the Browns. So this is subject to change, of course, depending on the outcome of the 2020 matchup between the Eagles and the Browns. Point one, fan base in 2019 in particular. So in 2017, we all know the Browns went 0-16. Second team in NFL history to go 0-16 with the 2008 Lions. And third team in the NFL history to go winless. Of course, the other one was the 74, I believe it was, Buccaneers. So then the Browns make some moves. 2018, they're okay. 2019, They start hiring these, signing these players and everything, and trading for players, and they get all these egos like Odell Beckham Jr. and all that. And the fan base became the most toxic fan base outside of New England. And all they did was talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, talk about how great Cleveland is, how great the Browns are, how they're going to win the Super Bowl. And it just became toxic to us. Name/logo. Okay, what kind of name is Browns? I understand you're paying homage to your former, to Paul Brown. I get that. But what kind of name is that for a sports team? I can't even think of a high school team name that high school that would go, oh, what's a great name? The Browns. We want to be the Hartford Browns. No. And then their logo is just an orange helmet. At least match the color. I never understood that. Your logo is an orange helmet when your team name is the Browns. I never got that. Quarterback carousel. Oh, boy. Ever since they drafted Tim Couch in '99, they haven't been able to find a quarterback. Now, Baker Mayfield isn't looking that hot right now. And if you would have asked me if I would have had this channel before the 2018 draft, I would have said pick Saquon at 1 and go Josh Allen at 4 if he's on the board. I'm a big Allen supporter. I like him because I do like the mobile quarterback. But guess what they do? They pick Baker Mayfield at 1, and Baker's Baker. So the quarterback carousel continues, but I'm sure you've all seen the meme of the person with all the Browns quarterbacks' names on their jersey, blocked out, written in tape and all that good stuff. It's kind of crazy. It's just pathetic. It shows that Cleveland, they don't know what they're doing with quarterbacks and development and all that. I take being an Eagles fan for granted because, think about it this way. Since '99, Eagles drafted McNabb. He became a franchise quarterback. After that, Andy Hall was a bust. Again, proves my knowledge from the early 2000 Eagles. Then you get Kevin Cobb. Cobb did okay. He ends up netting you a couple picks. Nick Foles, obviously Carson Wentz. So there's some good quarterbacks there. Cleveland, no. Lastly, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger. Oh boy, when I was younger, I despised Roethlisberger. He was just that guy that everybody hated. And yes, I live in the Northeast, so, everyone in New England hated Roethlisberger. My school consisted of, basically, if you were a football fan, you were a Patriots fan, a Giants fan, and there was a handful of us that were not fans of the Patriots or Giants. There was myself and one other Eagles fan, there was a Vikings fan, and there was a Steelers fan, and then there were a few other random teams. But it just goes to show you, Roethlisberger is one of the most hated players in the league just because of his attitude, how he acts. And, of course, I don't want to get in the off-the-field discussions like I did with Ray Lewis. I don't want to get into that. But we all know what was alleged to happen and what, I'm not going to get into detail on that. But, yeah, Roethlisberger effect. As it's getting, here we are in 2020. And even in 2019, 2018, I said this. Ben Roethlisberger, as much as I don't like the guy, makes the team that it is. So Ben Roethlisberger makes every receiver that much better. Martavius Bryant, what happened to him when he left the team? He fell off a cliff and he became nothing. What happened when Mike Wallace left the team? He signs this massive deal with Miami. Guess what? They end up trading him after 2 years. Or 1 year, it might have been. Antonio Brown, that's a story for another day. But it just goes to show you, when Roethlisberger finally retires, the Steelers are going to struggle more likely than not. Roethlisberger is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he makes the players around him that much better. Commonwealth rivalry. As you know, I'm an Eagles fan. Steelers are just the rivals in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, if I actually lived in the Commonwealth, it would probably have been 0.1. But remember, I don't. So, there's that. And they've always been better than the Eagles. So, last point here is the Mike Tomlin trip. So, I don't remember what year it was, but there was that play where the Ravens punt returner, Jacoby Jones, was returning a punt, and Mike Tomlin's got his knees over the sidelines, so Jacoby Jones has to avoid him because, of course, he's running down the sideline on a punt return. That's what they always do, and he ends up getting tackled. Tomlin gets fined because he's standing on the sidelines. He comes up with the dumbest excuse like, "Oh, I was looking at the scoreboard." What? That whole incident pissed off a lot of people, myself included. Myself included. Now, one good thing to say about each team, Baltimore. As much as I don't like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, I respect them. And you guys had a very fearsome defense in the, 2000s. Cincinnati. There's no reason to hate you guys. You've always had players I've never really minded. I didn't mind Andy Dalton before I went to Dallas. I like AJ Green, Joe Mixon on the field. I like him as a player. So I like a lot of the guys that they have in their team. Cleveland. You guys have a very passionate fan base, and hopefully you guys get a ring so long as it doesn't come against my Eagles. At some point, I just don't want to see it immediately right now. Pittsburgh. I like modern day Roethlisberger, and I've never disliked, Terry Bradshaw. I know he gets a lot of hate. I couldn't justify putting him as a bullet point, though. And, of course, you guys had the amazing defense in the 70s. But yeah, that was our AFC North Rant video. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good rest of your day.